Some things are inevitable in our world, like taxes, death, and military coups in Pakistan. Jokes aside, there is actual talk of a military takeover. The claim has come from Shahid Khaqan Abbasi. He is a former prime minister and senior leader of the ruling party. So he's a bigwig, not some political lightweight in Islamabad. And let me quote what Abbasi said. Pakistan has had many long periods of martial law in very similar situations. In fact, I would say Pakistan has never witnessed a more severe economic and political situation before. In much less severe circumstances, the military has taken over. That was a former prime minister. He might as well have laid a red carpet for the generals. I mean, it's an open invitation. The question is, what explains it? Shahid Abbasi is blaming institutional failure for this. Let me quote him again. Military takeovers have happened in many countries. When the political and constitutional system fails, extra constitutional measures take place. How about that for democracy? A former prime minister is openly defending military coups. Abbasi's statement is a reflection of the systemic rot in Pakistan. You will never hear such a statement in a real democracy. It tells you how far Pakistan has fallen. For now, let's focus on Abbasi's invitation/statement. How likely is a military coup in Islamabad? Abbasi is right about one thing. Pakistan's economic and political woes have peaked. Forex reserves are down to $4 billion. To put that figure in perspective, India has more than $586 billion. Pakistan has 4. Inflation is at 47%. Projected growth, 0.5%. And around 16% of all graduates are jobless. Politically, things are even worse. The government of Shehbaz Sharif is deeply unpopular. They are under constant pressure from Imran Khan and the PTI. And what's worse, October is election time, so the army has 2 options. One is to rig the elections to keep Imran Khan out, but it may work, may not work, but a backlash could spiral out of control. The second is to stay out and risk an Imran victory, which is unlikely. Looking at the army's history, there is a third option, of course, the nuclear option. Scrap the elections and take power themselves. It is by no means unprecedented. Pakistan has spent half of its lifetime under military rule. There have been 3 successful coups in 75 years. So another one is not impossible. Far from it. Having said that, 2023 is not 1958 or 1977 or 1999, which is when the coups happened. The times have changed. For starters, there is a new army chief in Rawalpindi, General Asim Munir. He took charge in November last year, November 2022. Will he be confident enough to unseat the civilian government so early in his term? Does he have the unquestionable loyalty of his men? That's gamble number 1. Gamble number 2 is the domestic reaction. In the past, Pakistan's elite had supported military takeovers. I'm talking about businessmen and even journalists. Will they do it again? Like I said, it's a gamble. Number 3 is the foreign reaction. You see, the dictatorships in 1977 and 1999 enjoyed American support, and both times the reason was the same, Afghanistan. But this time around, the Americans may not play ball. They have no stake in Afghanistan anymore. Plus, they have a strategic partnership with Pakistan's chief rival, that is India. It wasn't the case in the last century. These factors will influence the decision of the generals in Pakistan. A successful coup may resolve the political bickering. It may also provide some policy direction, but a failed coup would be a deadly blow to the Pakistani army. It may destroy their aura of invincibility in Pakistani politics. The bottom line is this: while it's possible for the army to take power, it's not probable. If General Munir decides to go maverick, then all bets are off, of course. But as things stand, it looks unlikely. India too will be watching the events in Islamabad closely. A military coup in a nuclear-armed rogue neighbor is never good news. The only option is to prepare for the worst. Now let's come to a pertinent question of our times. What is war good for? Is it good for absolutely nothing? Or does it help business? The results are in, and as expected, one business is having a stellar year: the global military-industrial complex. The latest numbers are out. World military expenditure has reached a record high. It has reached $2,240 billion, or more than $2.2 trillion. Last year's growth is fueled mostly by Europe, which is expected, of course, after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The war has shaken off the years of military complacency in Europe and started a global arms race all over again. Our next report brings you the details.
The war in Ukraine was bound to impact global military spending. It's the biggest conflict in mainland Europe since the Second World War, and it has alarmed European nations. Global military spending has gone up by 3.7%. In Europe, there's a jump of 13%, and the top spenders are countries close to Russia. Finland increased military expenditure by 36%, Lithuania by 27%, Sweden 12%, Poland 11%. Of course, the biggest spender was Ukraine. Its military expenditure shot up by a whopping 640%. In 2022, Ukraine spent over $44 billion on defense. What about Russia? It spent $86.4 billion. That's a rise of over 9% from the previous year. It seems like a modest rise, but given the fact that Russia was the world's third largest military spender anyway, the 9% bump is significant. Overall, almost every part of the world saw higher spending on arms. Leading the way, as always, was the US. Its military expenses totaled $877 billion in 2022. Remember, the global total is about $2.2 trillion. So Washington is single-handedly responsible for 39% of total global military spending. And while some of that was for arms to Ukraine, the majority was still for US defense purposes. America spent about 1.5 times what all of Asia and Oceania did on defense last year. And remember, Asia houses the second largest military spender in the world, China. China's military spending grew by 4.2%. to about $292 billion. It's nowhere close to the US in terms of spending, but far beyond other nations. This is bad news for overall global stability. An arms race between rival powers that eclipses all others. It has very Cold War vibes to it. The fourth biggest military spender in the world is India. New Delhi spent $81.4 billion on arms. It's part of the recent trend of India's greater military focus. Number 5 on the global list is Saudi Arabia. The Gulf Kingdom increased military spending by 16%. It's Riyadh's first increase since 2018. Last year, Saudi Arabia spent a total of $75 billion on its military. It's not all gloom and impending doom, though. There were some exceptions to the global trend. Like Turkey and Nigeria, Nigeria's military spending fell by 38%. But this is just compared to 2021. That year saw Nigeria increase its spending tremendously, so it's more of an adjustment than a proper decrease. Turkey, however, saw military spending go down for the third year in a row. It's down 26% compared to 2021. But that's also expected due to the terrible economic condition of the country. It's been facing a crisis since 2018, and last year it saw more than 50% inflation. So it's not surprising that its military expenses have been falling for a while. Overall, the outlook for peace looks bleak. The war in Ukraine is likely to spur military spending for years to come. So will the rivalry between the US and China. Every nation will try and arm itself to the teeth, and it leaves the world more unstable. Like always, the only ones who will benefit are arms companies.
Now let's turn our attention to Europe. It braved a particularly dry summer last year, and Spain was hit hard. Now its drought has prolonged, and the lack of rain in Spain is causing culinary pain. After all, it's the largest olive oil producer. Spain produces half of the world's olive oil, but now it is witnessing lower crop yields. So there's a slump in oil production, and prices of olive oil have been pushed to record levels. They've surged almost 60% since last June. Can the production rebound this year? Here's a report.
Europe suffered a blistering summer last year. This caused a severe drought, the continent's worst in 500 years.
2022 was the second warmest year on record, the warmest summer on record. We saw prolonged and extensive heat waves and also prolonged and extensive drought over much of the continent.
The drought ravaged crops across Europe, including corn in Romania, beans in Belgium, rice in Italy, and garlic in France. But among the hardest hit were the olives in Spain, because Spain suffered a massive drought, heat waves, and wildfires.
Conditions are as bad as they can be. There are droughts and a lot of wind, which is even worse because it doesn't let you control the fire.
We had never imagined that something like this could happen. I had heard about other wildfires, but this is amazing. I'm really anguished.
Now, 4 months into the new year, Spain's problems are far from over. It's still struggling with the prolonged drought, and the crop yield continues to deplete. Production of the green gold is in danger. This is deeply problematic. Spain is the largest producer of olive oil in the world, responsible for half of the world's production. But now this production has halved in the last 12 months. It's now 780,000 tons. And you can guess what this is doing to the world's olive oil. Prices are soaring, hitting record levels. They've increased by about 60% in less than a year. This begs the question, is the situation set to improve this year? Experts are doubtful. There is a clear lack of rain, and Spain is only getting hotter. Last month was its second warmest March this century. It was also the second driest, and April is set to be the driest on record. This is unusually dry weather for Spain. So in short, production is not likely to rebound this year, and it could keep prices of olive oil elevated. The situation is grim. To give you an idea, people are now stealing olive oil, especially the high-quality ones, which is only logical. If you're going to steal something, you may as well get the good stuff. Last month, the Spanish police seized 6,000 liters of stolen olive oil and 17,500 kgs of stolen olives. 16 people were arrested. While some are trying to steal olive oil, others around the world are shifting their preference to other cooking oils, like sunflower oil, which has also taken a hit. The war in Ukraine pushed up the costs. Ukraine was previously the world's top exporter of sunflower oil. Regardless, the lower olive harvest continues to hurt Spain. Spain loves its olives. It's home to 4th or 5th generation farmers. Their holdings go back to about 100 years. For Spain, its olives make people burst with pride. So the harvest may not just be a business to them. Also, Spain is a one-crop economy, and its people are losing money. Experts say the record-breaking temperatures will only get worse, and the country's current model of water management is unsustainable. So its people continue to brave the brunt of climate change. And while the olive oil capital of the world is parched, there is still no rain forecast.
For our next story, let's talk about romance. It's delightful, something worth savoring. We did a quick Google search on romantic quotes, and here's what came up. You complete me. I wish I knew how to quit you. You don't get to choose if you get hurt in this world, but you do have a say in who hurts you. Now, we can say these lines to someone we love, but do you know what else makes us feel this way? French fries. Seriously, for most of us, they're truly the love of our life. They lift our mood when we're feeling down. They make us happy, and they make our happy moments happier. But this love, too, is not without its problems. A new study says we are in a toxic relationship with fries. They're giving us anxiety and depression. Does this red flag call for a breakup? Our next report explores. When someone says exercise, all we hear is extra fries. Because French fries are not just a vastly nurtured starter, they are a comfort food with their greasy golden goodness and heavily salted heavenly crisp. They're so well loved that they have their own day, July the 13th. Americans eat 30 billion pounds of fries each year, and they are the national dish of Belgium. But hey, Maybe it's time to put them down and walk away slowly because this comfort food may be out to get us. A new study is out. It links fries with something particularly frightening. Pardon the pun. French fries may be bad for our mental health, it says. Research says fried food is linked to depression and anxiety. In terms of data, it increases the risk of anxiety by 12% and the risk of depression by 7%. This is especially true for fried potato, like French fries. But take this study with a pinch of salt. It's only in the preliminary stage, and its causality is in question. For example, are fried foods driving anxiety and depression, or do people with symptoms of mental health issues turn to fried food? The study has not answered this question yet. And this is not the first time research has pointed to the health downsides of French fries. Another study came out in 2017. It said French fries increase the risk of death. But this again was an association, and the internet was up in arms about it, deeply hurt that someone had dared raise a finger at their beloved fries. That being said, it's not a surprise that fried food is not good for us. Reaching this conclusion is not rocket science. For the sake of an example, let's stick with fries. They're made of potatoes, which are vegetables, sure, but they do not rank well on the health scale. Experts call them starch bombs. If you take a potato, remove its skin, cut it, and deep fry it in oil, then add salt, spices, and cheese, the situation becomes much worse, giving them high levels of trans fat and sodium. But apart from this, something else is just as obvious. Eating well is important for mental health. Studies say unhealthy food leads to fatigue and even impairs decision making. Depending on the frequency of consumption, it may cause stress and depression. Junk food is processed and high in sugar. This leads to inflammation of the body and brain. This can contribute to mood disorders, so it helps to consume it lesser, especially as mental health issues are on the rise worldwide. About 5% people suffer from depression, more than 4% live with anxiety. So is it time to completely give up on fried food? Well, experts say not really. Sometimes eating unhealthy food boosts our mood. So when we do eat it, portion control is key. A well-balanced diet is important, and elimination is not the only option. Because French fries may be bad for us, but they do taste good. And when you do eat them, here's a friendly tip. Fries go great with a salad. Enjoy. And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. Italian Coast Guard has released dramatic footage of a migrant rescue operation. Migrants can be seen desperately trying to be rescued after their boat sank. In Spain, police tried to catch hold of suspected drug dealers. This high-speed chase looks right out of an action movie. In Peru, a 1,000-year-old mummy has been found. It has some skin and hair intact. Scientists believe it was an adolescent. A movie theater in the US had an unanticipated visitor, a moose. It helped itself to some popcorn and casually left. In New Zealand, Aurora Australis lit up the sky over Christchurch. And finally, what makes April the 25th significant? We are taking you back in history. On this day, construction of the Suez Canal began. The year was 1859. The idea was discussed in the 1830s. There was a need for a larger canal, providing a direct route between the Mediterranean Sea and the Red Sea. The construction took 10 years. More than 1 million people worked on the project. It is believed that tens of thousands of workers even died due to cholera and other factors. The project was 4 years behind schedule. It was finally completed in 1869. This man-made waterway cuts through Egypt and is very important to world trade, so much so that world powers have fought over it. Today, it is one of the world's busiest maritime trade routes. We're leaving you with this. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
Come on, come on, come on. Give me your hand, give me your hand, give me your hand. Okay, keep on, okay? Keep on, okay, my friend? Left side, okay? Keep on. Come on!
The US and Russia are dangerously close to an armed conflict. This year, 2023, New Delhi will be the capital of global diplomacy. For a country as diverse as ours, with 88% of the population illiterate, it was a very big deal to write a constitution, and that too, the world's largest. Meanwhile, if we may, here's a Republic Day gift from India for the BBC. A list of suggestions for the BBC for their upcoming documentaries. Number 1, the Kohinoor and the colonial loot. Number 2, an outdated monarchy and unhealthy obsession with the royals. Number 3, racism in 2023. We're waiting.